In this video, we're going to be changing the timing belt along with all of the pulleys and the water pump in a VW 2-litre common rail TDI. So this engine code is CBAB. These are the parts that we are going to use. We've got a timing belt kit here from Febi, so part number 34128. Then we also have the corresponding water pump, which is 24360. So let's get started. We're going to go underneath first. I'll show you the position of the vehicle, how it is now, ready to start. Then we'll go and take out the arch liner. So let me take you down there and I will show you how the vehicle is currently sat. So the vehicle is currently supported on this side with the wheel on a couple of brake discs stacked together. On this side we're using an axle stand on the lower control arm body mount. So it's safe to get underneath. The reason it's not on a jack is because we're going to need that later, I think, to support the engine from underneath when we remove the engine mount. So let's remove this wheel arch liner so we can see what we're looking at. So here we are in the wheel arch. It isn't worth noting that you can just remove the lower section of the wheel arch liner, but I thought I'd whip the whole thing off and have a bit of an inspection of everything and see how we're getting on. We can see a bit of surface rust there, so I might take care of that while I'm in here. Can't hurt to take it out and give everything a bit of an inspection. So let's get on with the timing belt. So first step we're going to move the auxiliary belt tensioner pulley out of the way, and we're going to re-lock it back into its tension position. So I'm going to use this pin, and what, I don't know if you can see from there, I can, but this hole here will insert the pin in this, and we'll turn it until it lines up with this, slide the pin all the way through, and this will lock the pulley out of our way. So that pin is now seated, the pulley is locked, which will allow us to take the auxiliary belt out and out of the way. Incidentally, if this is also what you're changing while you're in here, I'm not. I did this fairly recently. So that's now locked safely out of the way. And then the next step I'm going to take is to remove this pulley here. So take note of this tab here, meaning you can only mount it in one position. We can also note that the previous time this timing belt was changed, someone's marked the TDC position on here. So we'll talk about that in a second when we set this engine to TDC. Okay, so we'll start getting all of this out of the way. We're going to remove the engine cover, we're going to flop the fuel filter out of the way, flop the coolant reservoir out of the way, and remove the extension for the washer fluid bottle. So let's get started with that. Yes. So that took a while, but here we are. So I'm just going to start putting some of the bolts back where they came from so we don't lose them. So now we have good access to what we need to get to. I've seen some guides where you remove the coolant temp sensor, so we might just do that while we're here. I don't know if we need to do that, but it might make our lives a bit easier. Now we can unclip the cover. So unclip the cover and we can pull that off. So now we've got the cover off, we can see the timing belt. Looks to be in fairly good condition. So let's keep going through and we will get the old belt off. Now we're going to remove the lower timing belt cover. We'll just unpin this grenade. So now we're going to unpin this. Which gives us access to our bolt. Okay, that should be the final cover bolt, or at least it's the last one I can see down here. Actually on this middle one there might be one at the top because it doesn't want to come out, so let's go find that and we'll take that out as well. As suspected, the final bolt sits down here for this cover, so let's try and grab that one now. Okay, so that's the final cover removed. So I'm going to take this opportunity now to go and set the engine to top dead center. So I'm going to take you down with me and we'll go and set that now. Right, we're now going to set this to top dead center. So what we're looking for, so we can slide our locking tool in, is to move this orange arrow here up to this position. So we can slide our tool in. And we're going to turn this engine clockwise to make sure that we don't damage anything. Always has to be turned in the direction that it normally turns in. So I'm going to move you now so I can get some leverage. So that should now be somewhere close. And we're going to line the arrow up with an arrow on here. And that now slots into the timing hole. And what we want to do is make sure that we can slide this freely in and out with no catching, like so. So that is now locked in the top dead center position. Okay, so now we are back up at the top after the engine has been set to TDC. We need to make sure that this section is pointed towards the top, and now we can insert our locking pins. Right, sorry about the cut, it's taken me a bit of fettling to get these right. Now there's a 6mm pin locked in here. It's very difficult to show you, it might be easier to show you how it's locked when the belt is off, so I'll give that a go. The kit, for some reason that I bought, didn't have a second pin. Not sure if it should have been there or what, but either way, didn't have one. So what I've used instead is a 6mm drill bit, and it's locked through this section here. Much in the same way as this one, the tab is aligned with a hole in the head. You push the pin or bit through the tab and then through the hole. So this is now locked and aligned. Now the next step that we need to take is to remove this engine mount. So I'll get you mounted back up top so you can see what's going on, and we're going to go underneath and support the engine with the trolley jack. So I will see you in a second. Right, the engine is now supported underneath. I've got a floor jack that's sat pressing on the sump, so it's safe to remove this engine mount. So we need to remove 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts, plus this supporting bracket here, and then this portion of the, well, this mount can come out, and then we need to remove this aluminium brace support bracket from the engine itself, but we'll get this out of the way first, and then we don't have to worry about running into issues with this. Now, if I've supported this correctly, there should be no stress or strain on these bolts, as the engine should be supported fully from underneath. And what we can see here actually is the bolt is pushing upwards out of the mount, which is what we want, because it shows you that the bolt is no longer supporting the weight of the engine. Now it's worth keeping our hands, fingers out the way of this, because it might shift as I remove this bolt, and we don't want to pinch ourselves or crush our fingers. So that is both bolts now removed from this mount, and all of the weight is now supported with the floor jack. You might ask why I'm not using an impact. I'm very cautious, especially with this side of the mount, that we've got a steel bolt going into an aluminium mount, and you're not going to feel it galling or cross-threading if you are using an impact. And I don't really want to buy a new mount, so we'll avoid that. So we can now remove our engine mount, and we're going to put the bolts back where we found them, because we're going to replace these with new bolts. Now we need to remove this large bracket. So I've raised the engine up with a hope that we can get a socket now on there. And we also need to be careful not to destabilise the engine. So there's one bolt. I'm going to put it there for now so we remember where it is. There's another bolt down there. We'll see if we can snake a socket in. I'm guessing this would be a lot easier if you didn't have AC. These lines make it very difficult to reach this one. It's going to be a very interesting torquing procedure on the way in, but we'll worry about that later. So, finally got that one broken loose. So I'll pop down underneath and we'll try and wiggle that off the rest of the way, and I'll show you the final bolt down below. So the final bolt, also in an inconvenient place, is down here. I don't think we're going to be, well, I've been trying to get a socket on it, but I can't see it happening. Well, maybe. If this coolant pipe wasn't here, that would be very, relatively easy. I think it's going to, yeah, I think that's going to cause us some issues. We'll try and use a spanner with another spanner to get that one off. I think it's going to be too tight to do with just one spanner. They're saying that this one seems to be looser than the others. Once you seem to break them past the point where they are in, they're very loose. They're thread out lovely, but it's initially it's that unwinding of clamp load that's quite difficult on these. So that's now out. Should come out when we remove the mount. That should be no issue there, but that may catch on that. So, but as you see, it's up against the frame. The other thing we could do, of course, is lower the engine down and slide it out that way. That's certainly something that we can look at. I will get this out. I'll let you know how I've done it. I'll pop the other bolt out, and then we'll have a look at the timing belt without the bracket removed. So I'll see you in a second. After some considerable amount of fiddling, that bolt is now loose. So we need to try and remove this mount. So I might get the engine back up because I think that will help us a bit. Should let us grab that bolt. And we can try and squeeze this mount out. Again, will be significantly easier if you didn't have aircon. There we go. So there is your bracket. So now we've got our engine mount out of the way. Obviously our coolant pipe is now, well, it's in the way a bit, but it's loose, it's free. We've got access to everything we need. These are still locked in place. The engine is still supported with the trolley jack. So we now should be free to start removing the timing belt. So the tension is now removed from the belt. As you can see, we've got some slack here. And now we can remove it. Okay, next we're going to loosen the bolts for the fuel pump and the cam. So although it's locked in place, the gears will be free to move. I think what I'm going to try and do is remove this tensioner and hope it doesn't bite me. So I'm going to put gloves on in case it attacks me. We've got this pin in here which is supposed to lock it, but you never know. I might try and remove the nut there for the roller. Hopefully that should give us the room that we need. So we can remove that roller. So the bearing on that one still feels good. Okay, so we've got a bit of movement now on this idler pulley, which should help us now get the belt off the rest of the gears. There we go. We just encourage that off the fuel pump. We can get that off the cam, off the roller, off the water pump, and then I'll just pop underneath to grab it off the pulley. Just fighting with this coolant line. And there we go. One timing belt removed. So now we can go ahead and remove this grenade. And it's not attacked me, which is good. The bearing on that one feels okay as well. So next we need to remove the final idler pulley. And that is all of the pulleys removed. Now the next step is to turn these gears as far as they will turn in the clockwise direction. Like so, like so. Now I have some replacement studs for these. So what I'm going to do is remove the existing studs and we'll just quickly pop our new ones in. I think these were supposed to come with the timing belt kit I bought, but unfortunately the seller missed them. Well, the producer missed them out from the box, and the seller refused to send me any more, so I had to go and buy new ones from VW. The last thing we want to happen is to snap one of these studs. So we'll tighten the nut up against the other nut, which will allow us to wind the stud out. So you can see it's a M8 on one side, M10 I guess on the other. So this is the part number we're going to replace it with, so N909055502. There's no Loctite applied to the one I've taken out, so I won't apply any to the one going in. I'm going to install this exactly the same way as we installed the last one, well, remove the last one, so 2 nuts together, tighten one against the other, and we can screw it in. A bit more on that one. So that's now bottomed out, so we're all good. Yep. And then what we're going to do is exactly the same with this one down here. One on. One. This one's probably going to be a bit more stubborn, as I think the replacement one I've got is Loctited, so expecting this one to have some Loctite on it as well. So you can see the Loctite there on that thread. So then we'll replace this one, so it's N104-44702. So that is now replaced. So now we're going to remove the water pump and try and do a hot swap. So we've got the new water pump there. Obviously we'll match it up in that orientation. I'm going to go and put a bit of engine oil around this to give ourselves the best chance. Right, I've got my spill mat down, so we'll try and undo the bolts now for the water pump. As per usual, the pipe is in the way, which at this point is just the bane of my life. So I'm going to try and remove all of the bolts. The O-ring should hold it in place until we are ready to pull it out. So all of the bolts are now removed, there's only 3. Our spill mat and tray are positioned. This is the part that's going in. I fully expect this hose to get in the way again. I might try actually undoing this clip and removing the hose to see if that helps us at all. Yeah, unfortunately, not dry. Okay, no problem. We'll just have to try and manage. That does help us though if we put it up there. So let's go for a hot swap. This is really well in here. Put some gloves on so I don't shred my hands. Okay, so I've just popped that seal out. So we'll try very quickly to pop this out and pop the replacement in, losing as little coolant as possible on the way. Okay, and that is now in. Obviously we need to bolt it back in, but for now it should hold. Now let's see if I've got the old one stuck in here. Let's have a look. There we go. There's the old one. It doesn't feel too bad. Has got a plastic impeller though, which is interesting. The one that I've just put in has got a metal one. Oh, let's just pop back out. Sorry, the battery died at a very inconvenient time there. All I've done is just put one bolt in here just to secure the water pump in place because it keeps popping out. So what we'll do now is chuck the last two bolts in and get this torqued down. So now we're going to torque these down to 9 Newton meters, which is not a lot. Just basically hand tight here. Now we'll try and clear up a bit of the mess that we made. So we'll use a bit of compressed air to blow it out. Okay, so now the water pump is mounted. What I'm going to do is replace the bolts on the fuel pump and on the cam. So the cam bolts are part number N107-15801. So we've got the old bolt there. Okay, interesting. Might have the wrong bolts for this one. They look a little bit too short, unfortunately. So we may have to reuse the ones that have come out. Let's see if we fare any better. Okay, at least we got those ones right. So the cam is N107-15801. So now I'm going to start replacing pulleys. I'm going to put them loosely in place for now, so we make sure we've got everything that we need. So I've got a new bolt here and here. So the bolt for the large one is N106-99901. The small bolt came with the kit. So I'll tighten these up in a minute, but we'll just put everything in place for now. So we've got our lower pulley. If I can get it on. Might need two hands. Got a new nut for this one, so it's N01508315. Then we need to take care that we mount this tab in that hole. and then we're going to use N106 092 03 for this nut. So I think I'll leave this one out as it might help us get the belt on. Okay, so now we're going to try and snake our belt in. So it's already sort of in a good shape, so I think what we'll do is we'll start down at the bottom, get that located on the gear, and then I'll pop back up and we'll start to feed it around the other gears. So 2 seconds and I'll go and mount that. So we'll work our way slowly up. So you remember that we've turned these gears fully clockwise. Right, I'm going to keep fiddling and getting this on. I'll bring you back when it's back in place. Okay, after a bit of fighting with it, I finally got it on. So the correct order to do this, allegedly, is the crank first, then the tensioner pulley, then the cam pulley, then the water pump, and then the fuel pump, and then the final roller bearing. I left this one out until the belt was on and then I put it in afterwards. Seems to have worked for me. The belt is in a good position. Everything looks correct. So what we need to do now is torque the 1, 2, 3 pulleys. So I will go and get started with that. Okay, so we're going to do 20 Newton meters for this one. We're going to do 20 Newton meters for the bottom. And then for this one, we're going to do 50 Newton meters. And then we're going to angle tighten 90 degrees. So I'm going to mark this bolt as vertical and we'll get our 90 degrees on this. So there's the 90 degrees. So we are torqued, torqued, torqued. Now we're going to tension this pulley. Until this arrow sits inside the window there. Now we're going to tighten this nut. To hand tight. Then we're going to tighten this to 20 Newton meters. Then we're going to angle tighten by 45. Now we'll tighten these to 20 Newton meters first. And then again, we're going to do a 45. Now these bolts you're supposed to replace, but the ones I've bought aren't the correct length. So what we're going to do is the best thing we can do now. We're going to measure this in various points along the shaft, and we're going to check for any necking of the bolt that might cause us any issues. So if it's starting to fail, the bolt will neck, so it will thin, and then it will break. So this is the worst of them. It's not bad enough for me to consider it a major issue right now. So I think what we'll do, I have no other choice but to reuse these. I might swap these out later down the line after this job is finished. I think we can do that with the all the lower covers still on, all of the engine mounts still in. We should just be able to do it by removing the top cover and the fuel filter. So I may swap those out at a later date. So let's carry on with this for now. So we'll torque these to 20 Newton meters as well. Then we're going to carefully angle tighten another 90. And that is our torque sequence done. So now we're going to remove our locking tools. Might need a bit of help with this one. It is very, very tight in that. So I'm just checking the timing here. This is incredibly close. So you can see there that both our pins are still in place. Just requires a slight bit of tweaking. So that's fine. I'm now going to remove the crank locking tool, and we're going to do 2 rotations of the crank, which will be 1 rotation of the cam. Then we will check our timing again, and we will check this. So the timing locking tool for the crank is now input. Obviously we can see that that is now moved. So I think what we're going to do is retension that back to its original position. You are allowed plus or minus 5 millimeters, which I think that probably is just within. But to play it safe, we will redo that tension. We will also check our timing. Very slightly out on this side. Okay, so after we did 2 rotations, I needed to slightly adjust the timing. So that's just done again with using a combination of those locking pins and the crank locking tool, just to set everything right. I did also need to adjust the tension on the tensioner, so everything's been torqued back up to its original specifications. So no issues there. So this should be done for the timing belt. So it's just a case of putting everything back that we took out. So we will get started with that, I think. Okay, so let's make sure that we don't forget about this coolant pipe. When we took the connector off earlier, don't need to do this, but I was just trying to make my life easier. Did not make my life easier. So normally this is a constant tension clamp, but this was leaking for me, so I replaced it with a Jubilee clip. See if I can work out where this goes. Always helps if you get it the right way up. So I'm going to put it together in a slightly different order that I took it apart, I think. I'll stick the covers back on first, and then I'll get round to doing the mount. Just going to go hand tight with these. I just popped the lower cover on by hand a second ago. I could gun these in, but some of them don't feel very nice, so we'll do them by hand. So like the top one, we'll just do them by hand. They're only small bolts. And we'll just mop up a few more bits of coolant that we've missed. So that's the timing belt cover now reattached. So now we can reattach this mount. I've got new bolts for all of these, so let's go through them quickly. So we've got N91191601. That's for that one. And for this one, I've got this bolt here. So N106-80203. And lastly, for this long one, I've got N106-83301. So they all only go in one place, which is convenient. And they're 3 different bolts. So let's try and get this where it needs to be. Okay, so we've got this where it needs to be now. So we'll loosely leave that one there. I think what we'll do is get it in hand tight and allow the bracket to pivot around there. So we'll leave that like that for now. It'll give us some room down the bottom of the engine, where I think we're going to struggle. I'm going to try and pop this one in now. So got two in loosely. We'll pop down the bottom now and get the third and final one in. Okay, it's the third one we need to get in here. And what we'll do for this probably is lower the engine down so we can access it easier. So we just need a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to try and do these to 40 Newton meters plus 180 degrees. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, to get a torque wrench in here. It's no problem. We'll try and use a crow's foot. Okay, so that's our 40 Newton meters. We just need to do 180 degrees now. So again, I don't think we're going to be able to, unless we can pull this down perhaps. So I'm not comfortable with that. So we're going to have to use a spanner, I think, which is going to be a challenge of itself. Try and get this one right, because I know the middle one's going to be next to impossible to get perfect. Okay, that should be about 180, and we'll pop that on there for now. I'll get the other ones exactly the same, then I'll come back when I'm ready to do the engine mount. Okay, that's all done. It was a bit of a challenge there, but we got there in the end, so that's all right. So now we can reattach our coolant line that's been in our way all day. Again, we'll just go hand tight with this one. Then I'll go and put the nut on underneath. Okay, that's all snugged down there. Just double check this one. Good. Then we'll mop out some of our fluid from in here, some coolant that we spilt. Now it's time for us to replace our mount. So at the moment we're way too high up and way too far back. So we'll sort that out, but first we're going to replace these bolts. So I've got these two bolts here, and we're going to replace those with these. So N105 52402. We'll replace the front one with N910 29602. and the rear one with N905 96906. So what I'm going to do first is hand start these bolts. Obviously we know we're in the wrong position, but it's good for us to get a guide where this is so we know what we're doing. So we need to come forwards and down. So we still need to come down, we still need to come forwards. Okay, so we're in the ballpark now. We're about the right height, in the wrong place, but that's okay. We can pull ourselves forward by hand. So let's drop these bolts in. Just going to whiz these down very gently. So I want these to be somewhat loose, so we want them to move freely, because what I'm going to do is try and match the original positions. Obviously you can see the marks in the housing, so this one needs to come this way a little bit. So we're going to do 40 plus 90 on these. Which is very tight. Then we're going to do 60 plus 90 on this one. There we go. So now our engine mounts are in place. Just going to get hand tight with these. Then we'll pop in our sensor. Like so. I'm going to go hand tight on these. It's quite a big ratchet, so the engine's now supporting itself again. Right, so we're done up here for now. We need to go down and put the bottom pulley on and the auxiliary belt back on. So I'll see you down there. Okay, so time to put our bottom pulley on. So we're going to use new bolts as we have with everything else. The part number for these is N910-48804. So we'll align our dowel. Like Then we're going to tighten these all up to 10 Newton meters. And then we're going to add an angle of 90 degrees to all of them. So we're going to have to try and counter hold this. There we go. So now before we add the belt back on, we need to tension, or remove the tension should I say, from the tensioner. So we've got the pin in there, so we should be able to hook our belt back on. We'll hook our top first, then we'll hook the AC, and then slide it under the tensioner. And now we can remove the pin and slowly let it tension the belt. Like that. So that belt is now on and tensioned. So I think we are done down here, obviously apart from the under tray, but I'm going to leave that off for a minute and make sure everything is working correctly. Right, we're back up top. I've measured how much coolant was in my spill tray. It was 1.2 litres. Some missed the tray, some went on the floor. So I think to be safe, we're going to assume it's 1.5 as a starting point. I'm going to add 1.5 litres into the coolant expansion tank. So I'm going to let this bleed through. We'll start it up. Yeah, as I said, let it bleed through and I'll top this up. I still need to add a bit more into here. Okay, so as you can hear, we've got no issues. There's no warning lights on the dashboard. Engine sounds perfectly happy and fine. So that's a successful job well done. What I'll do is I'll take it for a run, get it up to temperature. It should self-bleed. Obviously all the water that we have lost today has been from the block, not the radiator, so it should be pre-thermostat. I should have put the right amount of coolant back in, but I'll keep some with me, keep an eye on it and top it up. I won't bore you with putting the wheel back on and the wheel arch liner in the under tray because you're just here for a timing belt. I will stick all of the part numbers in the comments, in the description for the video. I'll try and get all the torques in the video description as well. And I really hope this helps you and has been a useful guide for you to change the timing belt on a common rail diesel VW TDI engine.